What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Online. So, today, the Horns of the Reach expansion has officially launched on the live servers, and I'm going to be going over my build for my Magicka Sorcerer DPS character. Now, it is a little bit different from when Morrowind came out, and I've done a little bit of testing, so this is what I use, and keep in mind that what I use may not work for everyone else, so if you found something significantly better, you can definitely let me know, but this is definitely not for everyone. So previously in our build, we use like Necropotence or Netch's Touch, and I'm going to treat this like a build video, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to go over gear, attributes, food, CP, skills, and a lot of it is the same. Mostly the changes are in CP and the gear, but we'll just go over everything just in case you are new and you want to like start playing a sorcerer or something. So I do consider this my main character now, even though I do play pretty much everything. But yeah, let's start off with the gear. And hold on, let me use food real quick so it'll give you a full buff or full stat bonus of what we use. So yeah, in terms of gear, I have actually been testing a few things, but one, the 5-piece Giuliano set. This one is definitely craftable. I used a heavy piece of the helm, medium on the shoulder. Doesn't actually matter which one's heavy and which one's medium, as long as you have 511. And I have 3 light Giuliano's pieces: the shoes, belt, pants. Doesn't really matter how you set it up because it's body pieces. So however you want. I have them all in divines and of course max magicka. So if you don't know where to craft Giulianos, you can look on your map. If you have Rothgar, which is the first Orsinium DLC, you can find the crafting station around here. I crafted it on my main character, but I don't have it on here, but it's somewhere around this area, like between the 2 sky shards, somewhere between there, I believe. So you can craft it, or you could just buy it off the market. I do believe people do sell it. And then our second set is something I've been playing around a little bit with. We have 2 sets actually. So the one I've been using a little bit more is Infallible Aether. Now this is not a new set at all, but they did like low-key buff it. So now it adds extra crit, and there's just definitely another line of text on here. So we have 5 pieces of Infallible, and we have the chest piece and gloves and 3 jewelry pieces. Right now I was testing it between Magicka Recovery and just straight up all damage. I think the all spell damage is slightly better than the recovery one here, so I'm gonna have to switch that one back, but realistically they both do fine. It's just, do you want more recovery or more magic sustain versus just more flat out damage? I personally think the damage is a little bit better, so I gotta switch that one back. And yeah, so 5 Giulianos, 5 Infallible. And in terms of weapons, now I understand not everyone is going to have the Maelstrom or Master Staff. You get Masters from Veteran Dragonstar Arena, and you get Maelstrom from, obviously, Veteran Maelstrom Arena. So if you don't have Master or Maelstrom weapons, I would recommend taking up a piece of Giulianos. I would kind of recommend like taking off a shoulder piece or helmet piece and getting like an Ice Heart one, because that one just adds more crit, and you could replace that one piece with 2 Giuliano staves if you don't have the Master Maelstrom, and that'll do just fine. So how you want to build it is 5 Giulianos in body, and that's the only way you could build it, because you can't make Giuliano's jewelry. So Infallible, you get this from Trials. You can do it on normal. The jewelry, if you do it on normal, you get it in blue, and if you do it on veteran or hard mode, you get it in gold. So realistically, the changes between purple and gold is really not that big. So if you're still rocking purple gear, that's perfectly fine. But if you want absolute best in slot, gold is definitely the way to go, and the only way you get that is doing vet. So that's what we have here, and we have 2 lightning staves, more for the what was that passive in the CP tree, like the knockdown or something like that. But we have 2 lightning. A lot of people run lightning these days, so you could use an Inferno. It's fine, but if you're doing like small group content with like 4-man dungeons, not everyone might have a lightning, so that's why I kind of run it just in case. So the reason why we have an infused main bar is mostly for the magic, and we have a sharpened back bar for the lightning as well. So if we had 2 Maelstrom or 2 Masters, the effects don't actually like stack, so that's why it's kind of good to have 2 different staves. Or if you did have 2 of the exact same ones, you would use a poison. In my case, I have no need for the poisons. I don't use Destructive Touch, but I do like the extra Magicka, and it goes well with the pets. So if you use it, it works. If you don't, it's just extra Magicka. That's always good to have. So regardless, Infused is good, and Maelstrom is probably a little bit better. So Sharpen got nerfed a little bit to make it somewhat on point with Infused, and sometimes Precise, but not as much. So what you really want is to have like the extra text on it, essentially. So Sharpened is still, I think, best in slot, but Infused and Precise come in very close. So if you don't have Sharpened, that's fine. Try to get Infused. If you don't have Infused, I don't know what to tell you. Try to get Precise. That's coming in 3rd, or Nirnhoned. But ideally, Sharpened, Infused, or Precise is really what you want. So that's my gear. If I were to add another spell damage jewelry piece on here, I would have like around 2300 spell damage. And this other set that I've been using that you guys may have seen before is Mother Sorrow, and I would have the same 2 pieces of here and then 3 jewelry pieces. So how you build it is up to you, but it's just you want 3 jewelry pieces of either Infallible or where was it? Mother Sorrow. And the difference between it is Mother Sorrow gives about 3,200 spell damage. So you can actually see it on screen in the tooltip. So you get about 2,000, like 3,500 spell crit plus 1,000 magic, or you could use Infallible and get about 2,500 spell critical plus flat damage plus 5% while you're in dungeons. And for this build, I like doing a lot of dungeons and trials, so that's why Infallible also works for me, because I run like a lot of vet trials and stuff. So the 5%, I do believe flat damage is always better than crit, simply because you'll have a base floor of damage. So let's say someone using Mother Sorrow can do 15,000 damage, and then if they do a crit damage, they're probably going to do more than a person who has no crit but higher flat damage. So, for example, if you're using Mother Sorrow and you do 15,000 damage base and you hit a crit, you're going to hit higher than someone who is using Infallible doing the same exact damage, but Infallible you would have like 16,000 base damage instead of 15, but you would have a lower crit. So it's really, what do you want? Do you want a higher floor, or do you want to like RNG crit and you would hit higher than Infallible? So it's really, if you crit, you do more damage. If you don't crit, then Infallible does more damage because you have a higher base. So math is hard, and pick whichever one you want. Personally, Mother Sorrow is easier to obtain, but Infallible works better if like you're running dungeons and trials because of the 3-piece, and if you want a flat damage. So if you're trying to like, I don't know, if you're assuming crits do not happen, Infallible is better. So it would take a really long time for me to explain all of this, but it's really, which one do you want? So Infallible versus Mother Sorrow, and then you have Julianos and your weapons. So that was very long-winded, I apologize. And now let's go into attributes and all that stuff. So previously I used to have 17 into health, 50 or like lower than 52 into magic. I lowered this to 12 health, and we have 52 in magic because generally you want a 17,000 base health if you're going to run vet trials in the future. 17 is low by itself, but if you're doing raids, you should have buffs like Ebon, Warhorn, additional resistance bonuses by healers, and all that stuff. So 17,000 is a general guideline of where you should be at a minimum. And the reason why I have lower in here is because sometimes I run a pet build. I don't use Ellie Drain in main rotation, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. So yeah, that's why we have that. 52 into health, or 52 into magic, 12 into health. However you want to build it is up to you. You don't have to copy this one. If you think you need more health, definitely dump more into health. The way I see it is you do 0 damage when you're dead, but even if you have less damage while you're alive, you still do more damage. So I value people staying alive, especially if you plan on doing score runs for vet trials in the future. A vitality bonus is very important. I do believe it is worth more than someone who does like 1,000 less damage overall. So yeah, stay alive. That's like the most important thing, and build however you want. So in terms of the Mundus Stone, this isn't 100%. I do believe the Shadow is still pretty solid. Now, I switched it from the Thief to the Shadow, and now what I'm testing is between the Shadow and the Apprentice, or Atronach, the one that gives spell damage. So I do believe with our build working with the huge stacks of crit damage, the Shadow is a very solid choice because you just get more crit damage, and you have a 62% chance to crit, so that's pretty good, and it just adds to that. So that's pretty much how I do it. And let's go over food real quick because this one's pretty short. Nothing really changed from my other builds. If you are using Witch Mother's Potent Brew, you're going to have to add a little bit of points into health because it doesn't give you as much. However, if you want to use blue food because it's cheaper, you could probably take out the 12 points into health and just dump it all into magic. It really depends on what you do. I personally like the extra Magicka recovery instead of the extra 2,000 health. So what you do is up to you. You get less health by using this one, but you get recovery. And in this one, you get max resources, but no recovery. And it's cheaper. So personally, I think Witch Mother's is a little bit better for sustained overall long fights. But realistically, it's up to you. They're both good. In terms of potions, spell power potions, this hasn't changed in the past like 2 years or 3 years since the game came out. You should always use this for raiding and dungeons. If you're like doing random stuff overworld that don't require boss fights or anything, regular pots just work fine. So up to you. Now let's go into our build real quick. Actually, hold on. Let me just slot the real thing. All right, so this is our main bar, the one with the Master Staff. Number 2 is the Lightning or Maelstrom bar. Nothing actually changes, but I'll just go over it real quick just in case you have no idea and you actually want to try it. So Hardened Ward is our shield. Shields are good. It prevents you from dying. This is why you're playing a magic class. You have a shield. Use it. Next we have Force Pulse. Now, the difference between the morphs are Force Pulse does a little bit more damage versus the Crushing, which is the other morph of this, which allows you to interrupt enemies. So I do actually switch this between, like, depending on what I'm doing. So like if I'm doing a trial that requires a lot of interrupts, such as Halls of Fabrication, I would use the Crushing Shock. But if I'm just doing random dungeons or something, then I think Force Pulse is usually the better way to go. Overall, you can't go wrong with either one, but if you want maximum damage, Force Pulse is the way to go. And next one, this one is kind of like our switch spot. So is 5. If you want to use a pet, then you can do it. If you don't want to use a pet, you can add like Crystal Frags and then back bar something else. I personally use pets for a lot of the things, but not the final boss of Vet Trials because they just kind of die to everything. So for the most part, I would say 80% of the time, pets are okay. except for when you're doing high-end stuff like hard mode trials, then you may or may not want to switch that out, but overall I've had pretty good success with it. Next is Inner Light. You get that from the Mages Guild starting at level 1. Everyone has it. There's no excuse. Get the Inner Light version. That one gives you extra magic and spell critical. The other morph of Inner Light is a PvP ability where like it lasts longer and you can see enemies from a distance. So it's more for PvE if you use Inner Light, and the other morph is PvP. Now, Bound Aegis is definitely a flex spot as well. You could take this off, or you could use Pet and something else. If you wanted to use, like, Crystal Frags here, that's fine. Shooting Star for our ultimate on main bar is just because it works, and it gives you extra magic from all the passives, so that's good. So what changed here? Blockade, the picture looks different. It's exactly the same. It's just it has a different picture. Blockade, we all know, is under the Destruction Staff, and it has the lightning one, so that's a very critical skill you should have, especially if you're DPSing with the lightning staff. You off balance an enemy and you do more damage. I'll get into that later with the CP changes. Now we have liquid lightning. It's a very strong dot that you should have. It's a must have. Pet, once again, you can change it on the back bar. If you don't want to use it, you can have an execute here. And Daedric Prey, if you don't use a pet, you get the other morph of this, which is called Haunting Curse. But if you are using a pet, then you use Daedric Prey. Really depends on what you use, but it's an important skill to have regardless. Or if you... And our next one is Bound Aegis. Once again, I said this was like a open spot as well. You have to have it on both bars to get the thing. So if you take it off one, you have to recast it. So if you use it, you get... you don't have to touch it. You just leave it on as a toggle. But if you don't want to use it, you could have either Mage's Wrath, you could have Boundless Storm, which gives you extra resistances as well. Essentially the same thing, but you don't have to have it on both. It's not a toggle. This one is a 23-second recast. You can have Power Surge, you can Streak, pretty much anything you want. So yeah. And then back bar, we have the Thunderous Rage Destro ult, because we all know the Destro ult just melts things, and it still melts things. That's why we have it. Use it 100%. So now we're going into the champion points, and before I start with anything, I want to say that this is how I personally built my CP layout. You could copy it. It'll do a lot of damage, but if you found something better, then use whatever you want because it works. So let's start off with the blue tree, because I think the blue tree is the most important one of all of them. And this one you kind of change around based on who you're playing with or what you're doing. So let's say you're doing a small group content, this would be better. We have 56 into Elfborn because you do increased damage with crit strikes and with Magicka abilities, and as a Magicka DPS, all your skills are magic, so that's good. Now you have Elemental Expert, 10%. This one's pretty good. We use all shock damage and magic, so good. And this is the one thing that you're probably going to change around a lot based on what you're doing. So if you're running like trials and your tanks, healers, and all this stuff are like straight debuffing your enemies to 0, you might want to lower this one down a little bit and just add more into Elfborn. Whereas if you're running like solo content, you might want to add more points into Spell Erosion and take some out of Elfborn. So what you do is based on what you like doing. So if you like running trials and dungeons, you may or may not want to have more into Spell Erosion. But if you just like farming the world, killing random bosses, there's a good chance that people play like they, I wouldn't say selfishly, but they build around their character, not build around the group. So they would have more spell penetration. If you're playing solo, I would recommend more spell penetration. But if you are playing with organized groups, or you're playing with the friends where you could tell them, like, hey, can you switch to this or something, then I would value Elfborn a little bit higher. After that, we have 75 into Thaumaturge because we want the Exploiter passive. This has not changed at all in the past few expansions or patches, so 75%, you get 23% over dot damage. You have a few dot damage: liquid lightning, blockade, your Destro ult, obviously, and probably a few more. So you want this. You get 10% for off balance with your blockade, and especially if you, or only if you're using the lightning staff, or if someone else is, you get 10% plus the 75 points, which is 23%. Math is hard. Just get 75 and you're good to go. Let's go into the red tree now. So, oh yeah, before I go into anything, I want to say that let's go back into here. Assuming you aren't fully CP capped, what should you prioritize in? You should get Elfborn and Elemental Expert. Let's say you have like 300 CP or something. I would go into Elemental Expert and Elfborn first, and then Spell Erosion third, and then Thaumaturge fourth. So, based on that, you should get a general idea of what you should do. Now, let's start off with the max CP, 49, 49, 48. This has not changed since the last patch. You keep it the same. The only thing that was changed in here was we took out some points from Ironclad. We added some points into Spell Shield, just because resistance is good. Why not? So, now let's assume you don't have max CP. What do? You want to prioritize evening out between Elemental Defender, Hardy, and Thickskin first. So let's say you have 100 CP and you have, I don't know, what's 100 divided by 3 is 33. You'd want like 11, 11, 11. And then once you get to around this range, you start dumping points into Ironclad and then Spell Shield. So if you were to prioritize anything, it's evening out the middle tree to Lady first, and then you're good to go. So next tree we have is the green one. This one really did not change at all because, I mean, there's really only one thing you should go for first. Arcanist, get Magicka Recovery, and then you want Tenacity, which restores more magic and stamina on heavy attacks, which you will be doing a lot. And then I have 4 into Healthy and 2 into Tumbling, simply because that's more of like how I play. You don't actually need it. You could probably just dump more into, like, I don't know, whatever you want. So we have 50 into Warlord. I might actually, hold on. There was something that did not go right. Hold on. We'll take out the 2 points into Tumbling. Alright, so now we have 1 extra point, and that's because the way it works, which is kind of dumb, is you have to be over the next 1% to get the actual effect. So for example, let's say I'm at 12.91, you get 12%. If you're at 13.01, you get 13%. So it doesn't matter what the point percent is, you have to be over the next full number to get the effect. So 13%, and then we have like 1 extra point now that's pretty irrelevant to pretty much anything. So we have 50 or 51 into there, and then like I just have a little extra point that I don't know what to do with. If I wanted to take all that out, I could just, this is the best thing I could do. Take all this out into Healthy and just dump it all into Warlord. I mean, it works. So that's what I would do. I actually don't have enough gold on me real quick. Hold on. Let me fix that before I forget. Professional video, don't have enough gold. They actually changed that. Let me just, okay, we're good. Let me fix that real quick. But if you didn't want to have it, you could probably just have 51 into here and get the 19%, which is, but realistically, the 19 to 20% is pretty irrelevant. And then Healthy if you want extra recovery, or Tumbling. That's really how I played. And then, yeah, so if you were to prioritize anything, Arcanist is first, then Tenacity, and then whatever 56% or 56 points, you could do honestly whatever you want with it. But late game trials, there's a lot of break free and stun mechanics that you want to use or take advantage of, so this is generally good. So yeah, that's pretty much my entire build. Just as a quick recap, 5 Julianos, 1 heavy, 1 medium, 5-1-1. The test between Infallible and Mother's Sorrow is definitely there. We can argue which one is better all day, but it's really Mother Sorrow is more RNG based, whereas Infallible gives you a higher floor damage. So I think, just in a nutshell, if you crit more, Mother Sorrow will be better, but if you are just unlucky and don't crit for some reason, Infallible Aether will give you a higher overall damage. If you don't have Master or Maelstrom weapons, take off one Juliano's piece and replace this with some sort of monster set that gives you one, or preferably Ice Heart because that gives spell crit, and make 2 Juliano's staves, preferably lightning. Traits are infused, sharp, or precise. I'd prefer probably sharpened, honestly, because I still think sharpened is best in slot. And in terms of jewelry, spell damage or Magicka recovery, either one is fine. I prefer spell damage all the way. I was just doing a little bit of testing, that's why one is off. But for the most part, pretty much all good. Potions, Witch Mothers or blue potions, spell power pots, Shadow, Mundus Stone. This one can be changed to the, what was it, Atronach or Apprentice? The one that gives spell damage. Or you can use a Shadow, and either one is good to go. So you should hit around like 60% crit. Honestly, anything above 50% crit, I would say, is considered good. So 60 is better, but if you can hit above 50, you should be good to go. So with that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you use something different. Let me know, because I am actually curious. And with that said, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And gameplay for actual like damage parses and stuff will be coming shortly. The reason why I don't really do parses on build videos right here on a target dummy is because it's kind of irrelevant. I don't really, someone can show me a 50k parse on a target skeleton and that means absolutely nothing to me, because if you're doing it in a real raid situation, there's a good chance you won't hit the same exact numbers, because target dummies don't attack back, they don't move, they don't do anything to you, they just stand there and you kill it. Whereas in a real raid situation, you have to avoid mechanics, the boss most likely moves, and you just have to do other stuff where so your damage won't be the same. So if someone shows you like some crazy high numbers, you could tell them to show you that on a real raid situation, and then that's how you balance it. So real raid gameplay will be coming shortly, and with that said, have a fantastic day. If you have any questions, more than happy to help, and see you guys the next time.